first epistle of Peter, chapter 4, verse 17. For the time is come. The judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? There is not only perfect equity, but withal a comely proportion and beauty in all the ways of God. Had we eyes open to discern them, particularly in this point of the sufferings and afflictions of the church. The apostle here sets it before his brethren, for the time is come, and so on, in which words there is first a parallel of the Lord's dealing with his own and with the wicked. Second, a persuasion to due compliance and confidence on the part of his own upon that consideration. The parallel is in the order and the measure of punishing. And it is so that, for the order, it begins at the house of God and ends upon the ungodly. And that carries in it this great difference in the measure, that it passes from the one on whom it begins, and rests on the other on whom it ends, and on whom the full weight of it lies forever. It is so expressed, what shall the end be, and so on, which imports not only that judgment shall overtake them in the end, but that it shall be their end. They shall end in it, and it shall be endless upon them. The time is indeed, the whole time of this present life is so. It's a time of suffering and purifying for the church, compassed with enemies who will afflict her, and subject to those impurities which need affliction. The children of God are in their underage here. All their time they are children, and have their frailties as childish follies. And therefore, though they are not always under the stroke of the rod, for that they were not able to endure, yet they are under the discipline and use of the rod all their time. And whereas the wicked escape till their days of full payment, the children of God are in this life chastised with frequent afflictions. And so the time may here be taken according to the apostle. St. Paul uses the same word in Romans 8:18, the sufferings of this present time. But withal it is true, and appears to be here implied, that there are peculiar set times which the Lord chooses for the correcting of his church. He has the days prefixed and written in his ephemerides, has his days of correcting wherein he goes round from one church to another. We thought it would never come to us, but we have now found the smart of it. And here the apostle may probably mean the times of those hot persecutions that were then begun and continued, though with some intervals for 2 or 3 ages. Thus, in the 6th chapter of the Apocalypse, after the white horse immediately follows at his heels the red and the black and the pale horse. And as it was upon the first publishing of the gospel, so usually upon the restoration of it, or upon remarkable reformations of the church and revivings of religion, follow sharp and searching trials. As the lower cause of this is the rage and malice of Satan and of the ungodly world acted and stirred by him against the purity and prevalence of religion, so it is from a higher hand for better ends. The Lord will discover the multitudes of hypocrites and empty professors, who will at such a time readily abound when religion is upon an advancing way, and the stream of it runs strong. Now by the counter-current of trouble such fall back and are carried away, and the truth of grace in the hearts of believers receives advantage from these hazards and sufferings. They are apt to put to fasten their hold better on Christ, to seek more experience of the real and sweet consolations of the gospel, which may uphold them against the counterblast of suffering. They are put to fasten their hold better on Christ, to seek more experience of the real and sweet consolations of the gospel, which may uphold them against the counterblasts of suffering. Thus has religion made a more real and solid thing in the hearts of true believers. They are entered to that way of receiving Christ and his cross together, that they may see their bargain and not think it a surprise. Judgment, though all their sufferings are not such, yet commonly there is that unsuitable and unwary walking among Christians, that even their sufferings for the cause of God, though unjust from men, or from God just punishments of their miscarriages towards him, in their former ways are self-pleasing and earthliness, having too high a relish for the delights of this world, forgetting their inheritance and home, and conforming themselves to the world, walking too much like it. Must begin. The Church of God is punished while the wicked are free and flourish in the world. Possibly all their days, or if judgments reach them here, yet it is later, it begins at the house of God. Number 1, this holds in those who profess his name and are of the visible church compared with them who are without the pale of it, and are its avowed enemies. Number 2, in those who profess a desire of a more religious and holy course of life within the church compared with the profane multitude. Number 3, in those who are indeed more spiritual and holy and come nearer unto God, compared with others who fall short of that measure. In all these respects it holds that the Lord doth more readily exercise them with afflictions and correct their wanderings than any others. And this truly is most reasonable, and the reason lies in the very name given to the church, the house of God, for number 1. There is equity in such a proceeding. The sins of the church have their peculiar aggravations which fall not upon others. That which is simply a sin in strangers to God is in his people the breach of a known and received law, and a law daily unfolded and set before them. Yea, it is against their oath of allegiance. It is perfidy and breach of covenant, committed both against the clearest light and the strictest bonds and the highest mercies. And still the more particular the profession of his name and the testimonies of his love, these make sin the more sinful, and the punishment of it the more reasonable. The sins of the church are all twice dipped, dibapha, have a double dye, Isaiah 1:18. They are breaches of the law, and they are besides ungrateful and disloyal breaches of promise. Number 2, as there is unquestionable equity, so there is an evident congruity in this. God is ruler of all the world, but particularly of his church, here called his house, wherein he has a special residence and presence, and therefore it is most suitable that he be specially observed and obeyed, and if disobeyed, that he take notice of it and punish it, that he suffer not himself to be dishonored to his face by those of his own house, and therefore whoever escapes his own shall not. You only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore will I punish you for all your iniquities. Amos 3:2. It is fit that he who righteously judges and rules all nations should make his justice most evident and exemplary in his own house, where it may best be remarked and where it will best appear how impartial he is in punishing sin. So a king, as the psalmist says in Psalm 101:2, that he may rule the land well, makes his own house exemplary. It is, one special qualification of a bishop and pastor, to be one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? 1 Timothy 3:5. Now this, therefore, more eminently appears in the supreme Lord of the church. He rules it as his own house, and therefore when he finds disobedience there, he will first punish that. So he clears himself, and the wicked world being afterwards punished, their mouths are stopped with the preceding punishment of the church. Will he not spare his own? Yea, they shall first be scourged. What then shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel? And indeed the purity of his nature, if it be everywhere contrary to all sinful impurity, cannot but most appear in his peculiar dwelling house, that he will especially have neat and clean. If he hates sin all the world over, where it is nearest to him he hates it most, and testifies his hatred of it most, he will not endure it at its presence. As cleanly neat persons cannot well look upon anything that is nasty, much less will they suffer it to come near to them or touch them or to continue in their presence in the house where they dwell. So the Lord, who is of purer eyes than to behold evil and iniquity, will not abide it with his own doors, and the nearer any come to him, the less can he endure any unholiness or sinful pollution in them. He will be sanctified in all that come nigh him, Leviticus 10:3, so especially in his ministers. Oh, how pure ought they to be, and how provoking and hateful to him are their impurities. Therefore in that commission to the destroyers, Ezekiel 9:6, to which place the apostle here may have some reference, Go, says he, slay the old and the young, and begin at my sanctuary. They were the persons who had polluted his worship, and they're the first stroke lighted, and in a spiritual sense, because all his people are his own elect priesthood and should be holiness to the Lord when they're not really so, and do not sanctify them in their walking, he sanctifies himself and declares his holiness and his judgments on them. Number 3, there is mercy in this dispensation too. Even under the habit of judgment, love walks secretly and works. So loving and so wise a father will not undo his children by sparing the rod, but because he loves, rebukes, and chastens, see Hebrews 12:6, Proverbs 3:11, Revelation 3:19. His church is his house. Therefore that he may delight in it and take pleasure to dwell in it and make it happy with his presence, he will have it often washed and made clean, and the filth and rubbish scourged and purged out of it. This argues his gracious purpose of abiding in it. And as he does it, that he may delight in his people, so he does it that they may delight in him and in him alone. He embitters the breast of the world to wean them, makes the world hate them that they may the more easily hate it, suffers them not to settle upon it and fall into a complacency with it, but makes it unpleasant to them by many and sharp afflictions, that they may with the more willingness come off and be untied from it, and that they may remember home the more and seek their comforts above, that finding so little below they may turn unto him and delight themselves in communion with him, that the sweet incense of their prayers may ascend the more thick. He kindles those fires of trials to them. For though it should not be so, yet so it is that in times of ease they would easily grow remiss and formal in that duty. He is gracious and wise, knows what he does with them, and the thoughts he thinks towards them, Jeremiah 29:11. All is for their advantage, for the purifying of their iniquities, Isaiah 27:9. He purges out their impatience and earthliness and self-will and carnal security, and thus refines them for vessels of honor. We see in a jeweler's shop that as there are pearls and diamonds and other precious stones, so there are files, cutting instruments, and many sharp tools for their polishing. And while they are in the workhouse, they are continual neighbors to them, and often come under them. The church of God's jewelry, his workhouse, where his jewels are a polishing for his palace and house, and those he especially esteems the means to make more resplendent, he as often as his tools upon. Thus observe it, as it is in the church compared to other societies, so is it in a congregation or family. If there be one more diligently seeking after God than the rest, he shall be liable to meet with more trials, and be oftener under affliction than any of the company, either under contempt or scorn or poverty or sickness or some one pressure or other, outward or inward. And those inward trials are the nearest and sharpest which the world sees least, and yet the soul feels most. And yet all these, both outward and inward, have love, unspeakable love in them all, being designed to purge and polish them, and by the increasing of grace to fit them for glory. Inference number 1, let us not be so foolish as to promise ourselves impunity on account of our relation to God as his church in covenant with him. If once we thought so, surely our experience has undeceived us. And let not what we have suffered harden us as if the worst were past. We may rather fear it is but a pledge and the beginning of a sharper judgment. Why do we not consider our unhumbled and unpurified condition and tremble before the Lord? Would we save him a labor? He would take it well. Let us purify our souls that he may not put to further purifying by new judgments. Were we busy reading our present condition, we should see very legible foresigns of further judgments, as for instance, number 1, the Lord taking away his eminent and worthy servants, who are as the very pillars of the public peace and welfare, and taking away counsel and courage and union from the rest, forsaking us in our meetings and leaving us in the dark to grope and rush one upon another. Number 2, the dissensions and jarrings in the state and church are likely from the imagination to bring it to a reality. These unnatural burnings threaten new fires of public judgments to be kindled amongst us. Number 3, that general despising of the gospel and abounding of profaneness throughout the land, not yet purged, but as our great sin remaining in us calls for more fire and more boiling. Number 4, the general coldness and deadness of spirit, the want of zeal for God, and of the communion of saints, that mutual stirring up of one another to holiness, and which is the source of all the restraining of prayer, a frozen benumbedness in that so necessary work, that preventer of judgments, that binder of the hands of God from punishment, and opener of them for the pouring forth of mercies. Oh, this is a sad condition in itself, though it portended no further judgment. The Lord hiding himself in a spirit of zeal and prayer withdrawn, and scarcely any lamenting it, or so much as perceiving it. Where are our days either of solemn prayer or praises, as if there were cause for neither? And yet there is a clear cause for both. Truly, my brethren, we have need, if ever we had to bestir ourselves. Are not these kingdoms at this present brought to the extreme point of their highest hazard, and yet who lays it to heart? Inference number 2, learn to put a right construction on all God's dealings with his church and with thy soul. With regard to his church, there may be a time wherein thou shalt see it not only tossed, but to thy thinking covered and swallowed up with tears. But wait a little. It shall arrive safe, just as a common stumbling stone, but walk by the light of the word and the eye of faith looking on it, and thou shalt pass by and not stumble at it. The church mourn and Babylon sings, sits as a queen, but for how long? She shall come down and sit in the dust, and Zion shall be glorious, and put on her beautiful garments, while Babylon shall not look for another revolution to raise her again. No, she shall never rise. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. Revelation 18:21. Be not hasty, take God's work together, and do not judge of it by parcels. It is indeed all wisdom and righteousness, but we shall best discern the beauty of it when we look on it in the frame, when it shall be fully completed and finished, and our eyes enlightened to take a fuller and clearer view of it than we can have here. Oh, what wonder, what endless wondering will it then command? We read of Joseph's hated and sold and imprisoned, and almost unjustly, yet because within a leaf or two we find him freed and exalted, and his brethren coming as supplicants to him, we are satisfied. But when we look on things which are for the present cloudy and dark, our short-sighted, hasty spirits cannot learn to wait a little, till we see the other side, and what end the Lord makes. We see judgment beginning in the house of God, and this perplexes us while we consider not the rest. What shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel? God begins the judgment on his church for a little time, that it may end and rest upon his enemies forever. And indeed he leaves the wicked last in the punishment, that he may make use of them for the punishment of his church. There is rod, Isaiah 5:5. But when he has done that work with them, they are broken and burnt, and that when they are at the height of their insolence and boasting, not knowing what hand moves them, and smites his people with them for a while, till the day of their consuming come, verses 16, 24, and 25. Let the vile enemy that has shed our blood and insulted over us rejoice in their present impunity, and in men's procuring of it, and pleading for it. There is another hand whence we may look for justice, and though it may be that the judgment began at us, it is not yet ended, and that we may yet further in that justly find him our scourge, yet certainly we may and ought to look beyond that, unto the end of the Lord's work, which shall be the ruin of his enemies, and the peace of his people, and the glory of his name. Of them that obey not the gospel, the end of all the ungodly is terrible, but especially in of such as heard the gospel and have not received and obeyed it. The word in the original has in it both unbelief and disobedience, and these are inseparable. Unbelief is the grand point of disobedience in itself, and the spring of all other disobedience, and the pity is that men will not believe it to be thus. They think it is an easy and a common thing to believe. Who does not believe? Oh, but rather who does? Who has believed our report? Were our own misery and happiness that is in Christ believed? Were the riches of Christ and the love of Christ believed? Would not this persuade men to forsake their sins and the world in order to embrace him? But men run away with an extraordinary fancy of believing, and do not deeply consider what news the gospel brings and how much it concerns them. Sometimes it may be they have a sudden thought of it, and they think, I will think on it better at some other time. But when comes that time? When business steps in after another and shuffles it out, men are not at leisure to be saved. Observe the phrase, the gospel of God. It is his embassy of peace to men, the riches of his mercy and free love opened and set forth, not simply to be looked upon, but laid hold on, the glorious holy God declaring his design of agreement with man and his own Son, his blood streaming forth in it to wash away uncleanness, and yet this gospel is not obeyed. Surely the conditions of it must be very hard, and the commands intolerably grievous. Did are not hearkened to, why judge you if they be? The great command is to receive that salvation, and the other is this, to love that Savior, and there is no more. Perfect obedience is not now the thing, and the obedience which is required, that love makes sweet and easy to us and acceptable to him. This is proclaimed to all who hear the gospel, but the greatest part refuse it. They love themselves and their lusts in this present world and will not change, and so they perish. They perish. What is that? What is therein? I will answer that, but as the apostle does, and that is even by asking the question over again, what shall be their end? There is no speaking of it. A curtain is drawn. Silent wonder expresses it best, telling it cannot be expressed. How then shall it be endured? It is true that there be resemblances used in Scripture, giving us some glance of it. We hear of a burning lake, a fire that is not quenched, and a worm that dies not, Isaiah 66:24, Mark 9:44, Revelation 21:8. But these are but shadows to the real misery of them that obey not the gospel. Oh, to be filled with the wrath of God, the ever-living God forever? What words or thoughts can reach it? Oh, eternity, eternity, oh, that we did believe it. This same parallel of the Lord's dealing with the righteous and the wicked is continued in the following verse, in other terms for the clear expression and deeper impression of it.